Hi everyone, it's James here and welcome back to our weekend challenge where we're going to have a look at the results that you've come up with making a tooltip for a button. So the challenge for this week was to set up a tooltip on the button on the template that I gave you. And it's basically a two-part challenge. The first is to write the JavaScript code to trigger a tooltip, and the second is along the design element of the tooltip. In other words, customizing it to how you would like to see it. So I came up with a couple of different solutions for the challenge this week. The first, I thought I'd just try out the Bootstrap Tooltip, which, as I mentioned on Friday, is one possible way that you could approach this challenge. And I'll just demonstrate what that looks like. So if you hover over, you can see we get a nice tooltip appearing above the button. And the way that works, the first thing you need to do if you want to use this for your own purposes, you need to have the popper library, which is required by Bootstrap to actually do the positioning for the tooltip. And you also need jQuery and the Bootstrap JavaScript library too. And what you actually do on the elements is you put a few data attributes. First of all, just a toggle identifier, a placement, so you can have it top, bottom, left and right, and also the tooltip that you want to display. Then all you need to do in your JavaScript code is basically target all of those items on your page that have a data toggle value set as tooltip, and then just call this tooltip function. So that works and it displays a nice tooltip for us. And after spending a bit of time looking at how you would create your own tooltip, I can say this is probably the easiest solution. So if you went for that, then no problem at all. The only issue that you've got with that, if you're not using Bootstrap and with these dependencies as well, you've got to load in jQuery and a couple of other things, which is a bit cumbersome, but you can get away with it on smaller projects. But that's the only downside to using this approach. So if I just get rid of that code now and show you what I came up with here. So all I did really is set up two event listeners for mouse over and mouse out events. So we can now hover over and see a similar looking tooltip. I didn't get that much chance to actually come up with a design for it, but it looks similar to the Bootstrap one. And just to go through this add tooltip function, we basically grab the element that has been triggered, like on the button, and then we insert some HTML after it, which has a class of custom tooltip, and we also get that attribute title, which is up here, so we don't have to hard code that into our JavaScript code. And the remove tooltip is a little bit janky because what it actually does is just assumes that the next element that's adjacent to the actual element that we've triggered this on is the actual tooltip, which might not always be the case, especially if you've got other JavaScript code going on in your page, but we then just actually remove that from our page. So that's triggered when the mouse leaves the button and it just removes that element that's been added onto the page. So that works okay, but the only problem I had really with taking this any further was with the positioning. So as you can see here, I've just positioned that tooltip element, the span tag that we've created. I've just positioned it absolutely and then just add some hard-coded values in here to put it on the top. But if you actually wanted to change it with the Bootstrap one, you can actually just say I want it on the bottom instead by changing that placement data attribute. But with our example, it just continually displays it in the same place. So we could add some further classes for positioning so that we position it in the right place. Or perhaps when we actually add the tooltip onto the page, we could use some inline styles to make sure that it goes exactly where we want the tooltip to appear. But this is just a simple solution that I came up with this week. I'm sure what you've come up with is much, much better. So pop a link to your completed CodePens in a comment below. It'd be great to check them out and see what you came up with. Even if you just went with the Bootstrap approach, or if you found another library which would do the same thing, which is interesting, it'd be great to check those out too. So that's it for this week. I'll see you next week in our weekend challenge.